Welcome everybody to Spirit Addicts by Fifth Quarter. It's the first time I get to say that. I'm proud to be able to say that. This will pretty much be the host, co-host. This is it'll always be like this for the most part, unless one of us have to miss. So for the first episode, we're going to kind of talk about, the past, the current, and the future of the program. A lot of people were asking me, not just James, but a lot of people were asking me why Mackenzie Milton was the cover of, or the edit that I used to do this, because I'm trying to figure out why he's letting everybody know that he's retired. I mean, we made a joke the first time that maybe he would be in the wheelchair league, so I'm assuming that's what he's actually retiring from, not from the NFL or anything. So
yeah, it's easy to be retired when nobody picks you. So it's all great guy. It's just I was like, man, this must be a slow news day because I mean, why are we even discussing this guy? But I know the fan base, right, wrong, or indifferent, really fell in love with the story, and anything that he does is like I've never seen somebody be such a fan favorite who's never made a play that you can remember. I mean, but at the same time, he never did anything, I guess, bad to Florida State besides not win. But it's just one of those weird things. Like everything that Mackenzie does is just like I'll never forget or forgive because when they did tour duties, one of the things that I do is I train. I'm kind of back in it a little bit with my son starting to play sports, but I train athletes. And I get a chance with a lot of orthopedics. They send me athletes with knee injuries. And I've seen a lot of guys recover and stuff from the knees. Like, when a guy's lacking explosiveness. And they posted that clip, and I'm like, yeah, that don't look good. And I mean, it was just a whole bunch of people like, you got all that from a 2-second clip? You got all that from a 2-second clip? I mean, I'm like, damn, guys. Like, then I started thinking, I'm like, you can tell people who are really behind this that have never been in that fire. You get a lot a lot of bad stuff can happen in 2 seconds. Put it like this. Drive your car as fast as you can and let go of the wheel for 2 seconds. and see what happens. Or close your eyes for 2 seconds and see what happens. In the 40, or when they testing guys, one of the true units to measure is your 10. Go look at what elite 10-yard splits are. You're talking about 1.5 seconds, 1.4. We just had Jermaine Johnson, I believe. One of the things that was impressive about him, 1.6 seconds. A lot of bad stuff can happen to you if you don't block a guy for 2 seconds. So it was just, in sports, 2 seconds is an eternity, but but a lot of stuff too is I knew information that one of the things we got, and I know you guys both get a lot of information. Some stuff you can't really report, but like one of the things that was told to me is that they had never seen him throw, and I was like, wow. But I will say, all jokes aside, from the football perspective, now I always tell people this is not a it's a tangible sport. Wins and losses. You're measured on wins and losses. But one cannot ignore that he did come from a catastrophic injury. And I applaud his effort, hard work, but at the same time, like, man, a lot of people put a lot of faith in him to do stuff that it wasn't from a lack of trying, it's just he didn't have it in him. And that happens. Again,
yeah.
The NFL told me I suck, so they retired me too. So
Yeah, I mean, I respect the hell out of Mackenzie for, just walking after the injury that he had. But as far as like what I remember that he did at Florida State, not that it was going to change the entire game, but I remember when he fumbled going to the end zone. I remember that. That's
You talking about against Wake Forest?
Yeah.
On the goal line? Yeah.
That's what I remember. I mean, that's like the highlight of what I remember. I mean, he played decent against Notre Dame at that ending part, but whatever.
But did he? Did he? Is that what we remember? Because I mean, and it's nothing wrong with this. I always tell people there's nothing wrong with wanting somebody to be successful. But
Yep.
did he? He didn't score a touchdown. He had one good pass. It was two good passes. One pass that was for yardage, and another one that I think was the shovel thing that just worked. But you got to remember that touchdown that we scored, and this is from Kenny Dillingham, not from me. We covered half the field with Jay Trav, and I'm not into an argument about the greatness of Jay Trav. Whereas I'm just saying a lot of times we if it would have worked, it would have been a great story, and I wanted him to do well. But like when you look at everything, when you take yourself away from the emotion, because it was an emotional game, a lot of energy, a lot of stuff. Like that drive was set up by Trav, and after that, he had a lot of other plays that nothing else happened on our offense if it wasn't for the running game. I argue that our Deshaun, Jay Sean were what we rode to the momentum, and I think we should have probably continued to ride those guys. Might probably would have won that game, but it was a great game though. Great game. I wish it would have worked better. Congratulations and much success in retirement to you, Mackenzie Milton.
Yeah, congratulations, Taylor. Unless you got something we'll start with first, kind of cover the quarterback offers and that nature of things.
Yeah, and I just want to end on a good note with Mackenzie Milton. Congratulations on him becoming a father. That's a really big moment for him, and wish him nothing but the best for him and his wife. So, just wanted to also mention too. Yeah, I mean the thing with him though, I mean it's retirement. I get it. It was pretty much stating the obvious, but you do have to feel for him. He'd been through a whole lot in 2017 when he had the injury. He was at his all-time high. He was sixth in the Heisman Trophy finalist award, and just didn't really turn out and pan out the way we thought it would. Florida State took a shot in the dark, and unfortunately, that shot in the dark really didn't pay dividends. Travis lost a little bit of confidence in the middle of the season. Ended on a high note, but was able to be a really good leader for Travis and kind of show him the ropes a little bit more. So there were some good in it, but you could definitely look at the bad and well. And State's best interest to be able to start him for some of those games, but overall, I do like the value that Mackenzie Milton brought, and definitely hope and wish him the best for the rest of his future. But going ahead and just talking about some of the current quarterbacks. Just want to touch on Chris Parson real quick. I actually made a post about that this morning, just in terms of just his commitment to the program, everything like that. Parson is currently committed to Florida State. He's a 17-year-old kid, so you really have to understand that he's just enjoying the recruitment process. He's just going through a lot of different things. Both of his parents are alums at Mississippi State. He's taking a Mississippi State visit next weekend, so that's going to be really big to see where Florida State lands with him. It's kind of a love relationship with Chris Parson and Florida State. They both want to have greater success to be successful. Florida State has been vocal and wanting to get two quarterbacks in for this cycle. We'll see if it goes. The two quarterbacks they're actually after is Ricky Collins, the Purdue commit. He's a 4-star out of Louisiana. And this is a kid that I really, really like. I think he's got a live arm. He's actually very mobile in the pocket, uses his feet very well. So I definitely think that could be a situation where Florida State can get involved. But the problem is when he's visiting on June the 10th, the next weekend he's visiting Oregon. So take that as you will, because Kenny Dillingham has been kind of susceptible to getting some decent quarterback commits. And then with the other thing, Brock Glenn, he's actually an Elite 11 finalist with Chris Parson. So congratulations on that. Glenn actually has a backstory because he is actually from Memphis, Tennessee. The staff knows him very, very well. Actually knows his father very well as also. So it's definitely something to keep up with Glenn because he doesn't have any visits after that. Florida State's kind of his only visit. He's kind of, I believe he was trending to, I want to say Louisville.
Yes.
He was one of those teams. And he is kind of on the fence. I wouldn't really buy into those Louisville rumors right now. I definitely think that those are the two quarterbacks they're kind of looking at right now. Not really much else kind of traction. They've only offered 11 quarterbacks. So they've really set the tone into saying, Parson, you were going to be that guy. But now they're kind of backtracking it and looking at it as, okay, Travis has already graduated this spring. He's kind of, I'm not going to say reaching his ceiling, but you kind of know what he is as a quarterback. You know, he's a redshirt junior by now. He's already been in the system for 2-3 years now, and you're trying to figure out what's the next best option after this. And you got a Tate Rodemaker, who's kind of performed well in camp, but when it comes to the bright lights, you don't really know what you got until, you know, he's out there. Then you got a guy like A.J. Duffy. He's a true freshman. You want to see more production out of him. Maybe he gets in a couple of games in garbage time. You got to have to see where that is. But really, after those two, I mean, if Travis decides to depart, you have to have some more options. And if they're unable to really get a guy in the recruiting cycle kind of things, you may have to go with a Parson and a transfer. I mean, it's just a really difficult subject, and quarterback recruiting is always fragile. And it always will be. They always want to be the spotlight because it is one of the most important positions of football, but you also have to understand that he is a kid. You know, it's going to have to happen. I mean, he's going to enjoy the recruitment process. Maybe there's an offer that comes out. Maybe he gets offered by Georgia, and he takes that Georgia offer and wants to commit there. I mean, you never know with quarterback recruiting. So you have to always recruit at that position. You always have to try to get better in everything that you do. And I think the staff is just doing what's best for them, what's best for this program.
And I think that's really what it has to come down to. You have, as a staff, one of the saving graces and one of the things that because our fan base is still splintered and fractured, and hopefully they'll start coming back. But instead of looking at things logically, we looked at things as you're wrong, you're the enemy, you're this. And one of the things that a lot of people who are, you know, super pro for the future was that Norvell came in the gate and got two high school quarterbacks, and whereas Tag had 0. He did have Jeff Sims committed at the time, but he never finished it. But you lost a couple. You didn't bring in anybody in your first recruiting class. He brought in transfers, but no high school quarterback. But obviously, it did not work. Right now, I guess the verdict's still out for Tate. Not a huge fan of his play. Not a huge fan of Tate's play. And Chubba Purdy has a very awkward, funky throwing motion that just didn't fit. For what was going on with us, and he had a couple of injuries, and it just never really was ever able to step. And what you talked about with Jordan Travis, I think this has to be the last year for Jordan Travis. You know, he's been in college for this is his 5th year. He doesn't have a COVID year, and if you get 8, 9 wins, then that's what your quarterback is. And I mean, and that's him taking a tremendous step, right? And not just a step as a quarterback, a step as a stand on the field, but you need depth. And the way you have to attack the recruiting side is you've got to have. And Jimbo was good at this when he was in his peak. Jimbo has styles or a specific thing that he looks for. So he had a quarterback. He loved live arms. That was one of his biggest things. He loved big arms. When you think about, I call him the worst quarterback commitment we've ever had. The boy, God, he threw it over the frat house. He threw the ball over the frat house.
Are you talking about?
We put him in one game in the Peach Bowl, and one play at the Peach Bowl, and they put Sean McGuire with one leg back out there. JJ Constantino. Yeah. He had a big live arm, but he was awful. But Jimbo loved live arms. He have specific. You had your Dalvin type of running back, but then you had your Wilder type of running back, or your Carlos Williams type running back. You had your Kelvin Benjamin wide receiver. You had your Rashard Green wide receiver. You had Kenny Shaw type wide receiver. So he was recruiting those different types of body types for what he want. You know, it's a set formula for what you want because of what you do in your system. And I think we don't really know what Mike Norvell's system is, kind of per se. It's like he wants athletic quarterbacks, but what he had at Memphis he wasn't a bad athlete, but he wasn't a good athlete. And you know, what we recruited, your Chris Parson, guys like this, they look athletic, but it's the diva mentality that you have. But we're in a weird situation where we can't afford to not take multiple guys or recruit constantly because of what's happened. Ever since Mike Norvell's come in, like you got the Luke Altmaier situation, you got we did get Duffy, but losing out on Altmaier, not getting anybody that year.
Yeah, and you lost Nico Marchio and it's hard to
Nico.
get those out of state guys. I mean, those are really hard to keep up with and everything that you got. I mean, when you're recruiting in the state of Florida, it's easier to say, okay, you can stay home. You know, you have that home aspect. You have a couple of different factors going your way. But when you're recruiting guys from Brentwood, Tennessee, and Arizona, you know, California, whatever the case is, they're hard to reach for. And I mean, you even talked about Luke Altmaier. I mean, staying home in Mississippi, that's a very, very important part for those kids in Mississippi because either they want to go to Mississippi State or Ole Miss. I mean, it doesn't change, you know, everything that's going on. And it doesn't help that Florida State's 26-33 in their last 5 years. That also doesn't help anything.
Well, here's kind of the point that I'll bring up. I don't think any of us – I mean, I think people think that they have, and they have a pretty good projection on what Jordan Travis can do. But look at Jameis Winston in his last year at Florida State before he went to the NFL. We had some extremely goofy plays in the backfield, especially against Oregon. But when your offensive line gives you almost no time to throw the ball.
No time.
Or you know, your wide receivers aren't getting any separation. Like when you talk about Jameis Winston when we won the national title – James just said it. You got Kelvin Benjamin. You got Green. I mean, the list goes on about wide receivers that have separation. Then you had, Nick O'Leary that was a tight end that got more separation than most of the wide receivers, and that was saying something. We ain't had a good tight end since Nick O'Leary, or maybe Izzo. But my thing is like now that the offensive line got a little bit more depth versus what we had. Now that we've got some wide receivers that transferred that looked to have some separation from the DBs, now I think you will see what the ceiling is. As long as they play like they're supposed to, you'll see what the ceiling is for Jordan Travis. Like, when he's got time, it's some of the best passes, tight spirals I've seen. But when he doesn't, it's terrifying. But, I mean, you need a little bit more than 1.6 seconds in the backfield to at least let the ball go and let the route develop a little bit. But James, kind of touch on. I mean, hell, when's the last time we had a fullback? That's kind of like my thought process. I haven't seen a fullback for Florida State for a minute. So
what's the charges? But he was a tight end. I'm from out of Valdosta. He could have been great. I think. I always joke and people get on me, but I think that's when we were a proper country, is when the fullback was more prevalent in the offense. When we went to the spread, it's when we became a little softer, as a more sensitive, and started being like, oh, it looks different or it feels good, and we stopped using numbers and metrics. Like, I joke with people all the time. I mean, I wish I could go to the bank with the excuses. Gabe Neighbors, that's it. I wish I could go to the bank with some of the excuses that people have made for the product over the last few years on both sides. Like, my bank, even with COVID, even catching COVID, like, I almost died. My bank said, great, I'm glad you recovered, glad you're here. Mortgages still do. So the utility company said, if you don't pay your bill, the light's not going to be on. They don't want to care about it, look different, no excuses are made in life, and elite people don't make those. But I think, what they could do is they've got more tight ends than anybody in the nation. Like, if you go out and check out a practice, it's a ton of them. Is you convert, because all the fullback in today's game is a shorter tight end. But I think it would, when you look at where Florida State has been strong, in particular last year, and a lot of your production coming back is with Trayshawn Ward, is the fullback basically helps a offensive line that's weak, especially. Your tackles can't really block the defensive end. Well, what you do is you block down. Defensive end has to step and do some things, and now the fullback comes in and seals. It's like a misdirection type of thing. You can put up a bunch of different sets. It was funny. Today, my son is at a football camp in Tallahassee at Leon High School, and because I was a celebrity coach, they played a game that a lot of people recognize me from, and it was the Miami game in 2005. But I remember that's when we started shifting to a spread type of offense. So I wasn't in the traditional I formation backfield. There was a trips formation where I was off the line. There was a lot of motions and a lot of different things that I could do. So when you have a good, and they've got a little bit better athletes than I was back then. So they were asking me to do, but I could have done it, but they asked me to do things that it was foreign to me up until that concept. But like if you've got guys that can go and do these things, and you can start moving them and manipulate them, when we get into goal line situations, we don't have to be cute. When we get into short yardage situations, we don't have to get cute. And you don't have to necessarily just give the ball to the fullback. You can actually, again, let the fullback blow it up. A guy who I would recommend that they should just go ahead and just say, hey, we're going to use him as a fullback. We're going to put packages together for him is Wyatt Richter. I think Wyatt is tough enough. Wyatt has good enough hands. Wyatt is athletic enough to be able to provide you more of what like Freddie Stevenson used to do, more of what Lonnie Pryor used to do. So you don't have to let them come up and just be bruisers and punch people in the mouth. What you do is you just put them in a situation and they flip it. And because of the way the game is, especially in the ACC, where you're having a lot of 200 to 220 pound linebackers because of the spread situation, you can condense and get nasty, and you can blow people off the ball. But having a fullback and having that mentality, it's a different mindset that I hope Florida State adopts. We haven't had that in quite some time. Like, we just aren't mean. As a fan base, we're getting a little soft, and our players up until this year, which I think we got some guys that have some chips on their shoulders and something to play for. So hopefully that translates well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Taylor, man, kind of like free range it wherever you want to go with it.
Well, I wanted to actually touch on James's point real quick as well, because I know when Mike Norvell came to this program, he really wanted DJ Lundy to be kind of that fullback type deal. I know he was a wrestler at one point. I know he had some experience at fullback. I didn't really see the fit. I thought that Wyatt Rector would have been a better choice, like James had talked about. I know they don't use a traditional, under center fullback, but they do use the H-back quite a bit, sometimes in motion as well. I think that could be a viable piece for them going forward because, like I said, they do need more blocking protection. I mean, their offensive line is still kind of a work in progress with certain pieces. And, yeah, I know the left side of the offensive line with Robert Scott and Dylan Gibbons I think are very, very solid. But then you go to the right side and you're kind of figuring out who's going to be in that rotation when Gibbons and Scott have already kind of figured out and solidified themselves on the left side. So that's kind of where my point needs to go really is, you talk about keeping Travis healthy. I think that's a big thing for Florida State going forward this year and how they can be successful. And I really do think that Travis, if he plays even 10 games this season, I think that could be a really, really big help in getting Florida State to where it's 7 or 8 games. And I think that's a big jump start there. I don't think you need to have another losing season. So, I mean, that needs to be out of here. But I definitely think that if Florida State's able to generate some kind of momentum, especially early in the season, I mean, you got all the momentum in the world. All the eyes are watching you. You're even playing Duquesne at 5 Eastern. So, I mean, you're turning around. You're playing LSU at a night game, at a primetime game, standalone game in front of everyone. Then you turn around and you have that bye week, and then you go straight into Louisville on a night game in kind of a revenge format where you haven't really won in quite some time. And it's really been a statement game that you really need to pick up on because recruits look at this. They look at that 0-4 start last season, and they understand saying, hey, you have to make some kind of momentum on the trail, and this is how you're going to do it. And everyone's kind of in a wait-and-see process, just like us fans at some points. And this is the time to shine. If you're able to go 2-1 in your first 3 games, I think that really could pay dividends to what you can get.
Well, like my biggest statement would be, everybody gave the excuse why Florida State lost to the Gators, why we lost to Miami, why we lost to everybody in COVID year other than COVID year. The reason was we had a brand new staff, we had a brand new head coach. So then we should have no problem as Florida State going and beating Miami, beating the Gators, beating LSU because they've all got brand new head coaches. Regardless of their names, regardless of who they are. I mean, it's a brand new coaching staff. So we should be able to go in there and beat them the way that they came in and beat us. That's how I see it.
And bigger than that, look at the departures that they've had, like the people who have transferred out. the people who left to go to the NFL. Florida's hurting. Florida does have a really good starting D line, but actually both Florida and Miami, they both have some really good guys on the defensive line, but they lack depth tremendously. I mean, just look at who they were fighting for. They're fighting for, nothing wrong. Daryl Jackson from out of Maryland, former 3-star. I mean, paying top dollar. Well, bidding top billing to try to get him to come for their services. Tennessee's like a guy who's been to Tennessee, been to West Virginia, and now is committed to Jackson State. Like, everybody picks on Florida State for losing Travis Hunter, and don't get me wrong, I get it. But like, Florida's literally trying to fight tooth and nail for a guy who doesn't have options. And LSU lost a lot of guys. They've got a lot of wide receivers. Like, basically, where they had a lot of strength was at the wide receiver position, but everybody left to go to the NFL or hit the transfer portal. It's a lot of reasons to not necessarily be optimistic, but not to necessarily be overly disgruntled when it comes to those games. And there's still a lot of positive question marks, or question marks that you could be optimistic about. So when I went to the practices in the spring, and I always like to joke with people, and maybe they'll change it, but technically I'm not media, because the Bajers being moaned, I try not to curse, being moaned so much about when I was, that I was going back and forth. I was told that I need to make a choice. So I'd rather be a former player that just happens to have a radio show than a former player who's in media. So I am not a media member. So when I'm watching the game, when I'm watching practices, I'm watching practices. My son has a better understanding of what happens at FSU practices than anybody in the media, because he actually almost got killed by number 11, I believe, Josh Burrow, if I remember correctly, because on the first day of full pads, because he doesn't know how to keep his head on the swivel. It was the last play of practice, and even Coach Norvell was like, "Hey, you almost lost your son." I'm like, "Hey, he wants to play tackle. You got to learn how to take a hit." But when I'm watching the wide receiver from Arizona State, you got to forgive me for something that's CTE. Yeah. Jordan was it's not Jordan was. Anyway,
Johnny,
big wide receiver, just really big frame. Yeah. So when I think about the intercept, something that I noticed. So if everybody does something similar, then it's being coached, right? So that's just that's from free game. We have this play where the quarterback, it breaks down. It's a flood zone. He scrambles to the right, and instead of throwing it out of bounds, it's just chunk it up, and it's an interception. Like, literally every quarterback on our roster has thrown an interception on that play, throwing it to the sideline. Well, now you've got 6'1" guy who actually has really decent control over his body. And he can actually, like, you probably won't throw the interception because now you can throw it to the moon and he has a chance to get it. So you're going to overthrow everybody. We have a guy, we haven't had anybody that can beat press coverage. And that's really been, like, that's what when people want to know why did Florida beat us. If Florida didn't fire Dan Mullen, we would have won. And because Dan Mullen runs the system, runs his stuff. But what happens when you fire a coach and you put in guys that nobody else wants, because none of those guys, only one of those guys was hired anywhere else, but nobody wants it. And then one guy went to Jackson State, but you go base. And that's one of the biggest things. When Miami started coming back, Miami's defense literally just said, we're going base, we're going man coverage, and we're going to go, our front seven is better than your front seven. Prove to us that you can beat us. If you can beat us, you're going to beat us by 1,000,000. We don't think you're going to do that. If Florida was able to do that to us, and luckily they didn't have any offensive prowess, and so the game didn't become out of hand, but if they would have just, because a lot of people think, we're going to blitz Jordan Travis. Actually, blitzing Jordan Travis, he has more success, because when you blitz or you're running the zone, there are spots that you can throw to that guys can get, and that's what happens. Like, now we may have a guy like Mr. Wright actually running full speed and cutting, and it doesn't look like he was overly affected. That's a miracle in of itself. Now, Burrell, some of these other wide receivers that we have high hopes for, who aren't number one wide receivers, but they're tremendous 2s and 3s. If one of these transfers can, the boy with the receding hairline from Oregon, I just go ball, baby. I just need you to go ball. He's actually somebody who I'm truly excited for. So I think, I'm not trying to. No, we're not ACC contenders at all. But we're, from a talent perspective, from having seen it in the ACC, not anywhere else. For the SEC, I would be way more upset. But from the ACC, we're not a 4-5 win team in the ACC. And if you really believe that, any media that you guys digest, right, that you read, and if they truly believe that, then their articles need to start showing what belief systems are. Because they've been feeding you a lot of BS over the past few years. But if you truly believe that, then it shouldn't be we being coach this year. Oh, this is the closest that we've ever been together as a team. Oh, I feel this. Oh, we're going to surprise. No, you need to call them out, and your articles need to say that, hey, man, I think this might be the end. This might be the end. You need to be playing Boys to Men at the beginning of every one of your podcasts, the end of the road, with the dark-skinned boys guy. That's what needs to happen. But I actually think that with what LSU has got, and that would tell us a lot. If we can't take advantage of it, I'm not saying blow LSU out because I don't think that's realistic. Because to blow somebody out isn't a talent thing; that's a mentality thing. Getting blown out or blowing somebody out is a mentality. When you get blown out, you quit. On this level, we should never be in a situation where the talent differential is that far. Like, losing by 14 is cool. Losing by 20, depends on how things go. 40-point losses here, that you quit. You lay it down. Yeah. And to blow somebody out, that literally means you gotta, like, people talk about dog, but like you want to break somebody's neck. You put your foot. It's called put your foot on their neck. Like when somebody falls down to the ground, you don't try to help them back up. You start stomping them. Like that's it. Like think MMA. Like when somebody gets punched in MMA and they fall, those guys don't say here. They don't put their hands up. Punch, guy falls immediately. They go. That's a kill. That means you're going for the kill. And I don't know. I would love to see us have that. I don't think we've had that because even in our wins, blowing people, we're beating the hell out of somebody. We're beating the hell out of Boston College. We're about to reset the PlayStation, and then you let them come back. Like that would have never happened when I played. Like not like that. Not to those teams. Those teams are sisters of the poor. I get Miami ebbs and flows of a rivalry, talented team. Clemson, we probably should have finished them off. Ebbs and flows, more talented team than us. But you gotta have killers. But I'm not saying that the coaches aren't, but I'm just saying like that's an attitude thing. And attitude does, in fact, reflect leadership.
Yeah. One thing that I'm going to bring up, and I think that this young man is going to be well deserving. We have a couple of scholarships that are left over at this point because of transfers, not signing the full class of guys. So I think C.J. Campbell has got to be one that's being looked at to possibly give that full ride to because he's just been doing everything right on his side. I mean, you just had was it DJ Williams just out? And this kid, I'm not talking bad about DJ. Good luck to him, but it had a lot to do with what CJ was able to do in practice. It was a lot to do with what plays he was making during the scrimmage. So you had DJ leave. So now it's time. Let's give CJ his full ride. Let's give the young man a shot because, like me and James had talked about it offline, but James said that CJ is one injury away from at least crucial playing time. He'd play a lot. So Taylor, if you had somebody that you could pick with one of those scholarships, who would you go with?
I will add this about C.J. Campbell as well. Him coming out of Panama City Beach, he was actually one of those kids where I think he had 2,800 all-purpose yards. He was a kid that was all over the field. I was very surprised whenever he only received a scholarship offer from Davidson. I talked to him pretty often. He's always had a chip on his shoulder. He's he's come from a good situation later on. Just a situation where he had some bad luck with some of his family members, moving, foster care, everything like that. But he kind of found his niche later on in life and realized all the great things that are going on in his life, and he just got to focus on football, and ended up football really being great for him and great opportunity. So I really do think that could be a situation where Florida State can really take advantage of that, because they only have 4 scholarship running backs right now. The thing with DJ Williams is when he came from Auburn to Florida State, there was a situation where he really wasn't in top physical shape, and it came to a situation where he just could never recover. And I mean, that's not really a knock on him, because I do think that he could have been utilized in some kind of form or fashion, but I really didn't know how he would be utilized this year, considering we had, Lawrence Toafili, Trey Benson, even a guy like Trayshawn Ward. I think those 3 are probably going to be your mainstays. And then you may see a CJ Campbell or something on special teams this year until we kind of figure out what's going on with that. But in terms of just scholarships in general, I think maybe even a Dante Anderson would be a situation there, because he's a walk-on now. Really, I don't necessarily think he was probably a 4-star like everyone thought he was going to be in the recruiting sites. I don't necessarily think he was, I think he was a little bit more overvalued than what he was. But I do think that his body wasn't quite there at the time. I believe he's up to 235 now. So he wasn't about 210. He was kind of getting to that Patrick Payton type deal where he kind of sprung up in weight a little bit. But I was very excited to see where Florida State was going to have him as a project. And I think that with them having 82 scholarship players, I think Dante Anderson could be that guy to kind of step up in that role.
James, I'm gonna have a 2-part question for you. First, you can touch on if there's a specific player that you think should get a full ride. Second part is, because this is what I've been saying, me and you talk a lot about, and I'm not bringing up NIL, I'm just using the same reference. But with NIL, you made the statement, adapt or die. So I think it's time for the ACC, or those of the ACC, Florida State especially, like, it's time for us to adapt to the idea of going to a different conference, whether that be the Big Ten, or I'm telling y'all there's no way the SEC is letting us in. I'm sorry, I just don't see it happening. Regardless of how bad we are or how good we are, I just don't see it happening. But that's my 2-part question. I would choose the Big Ten because of the money, plus you're not getting beat up by an SEC team every week.
Well, obviously, CJ, I think you got to see. I like the like what you and Taylor picked up, but the quarterback from St. Thomas Aquinas, I got mad at me in the 5th quarter, and I said he was the best quarterback. It sounds weird, and I get it. Like, nobody wants to believe that a walk-on quarterback is the best quarterback that you have, but there are a lot of things that I do speak in more colorful language. And it's not again, I don't have anything against these guys. These guys are like little brothers. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about skill set and we're talking about production and what we're going to do, I can only tell you what I have seen. And when and I joke that I call Chubb Purdy, if you're 80s baby, I'm realizing when I go out, I realize I'm old, because I'm talking to people who are a lot younger and they don't understand my references, and it bothers me. But we had Married with Children. Everybody knows Al Bundy now as the dad from Modern Family. But if you remember, he scored 4 touchdowns against the rival, and that was his claim to fame. But there's a picture of him throwing the ball like this, and I would say that's Chuba Purdy. I said I don't want him throwing a football to anybody in a game that matters. Tate, and I'm sure Tate will be fine. I think he'll be a great coach. I think he's going to be a great ambassador. I saw everything that I needed to see when I saw him play Jacksonville State the first time, and we almost lost. And I think, but that kid, even so in fall camp last year. So people don't realize they came to Jacksonville, and actually, right when I got out of COVID, one of the first things I was going to do, and I love taking my son. I love the opportunities I have that I fall for. Privilege is real. Some people don't want to argue about their privilege. I have FSU privilege. I understand it. My son gets to watch the game because of what his dad did. It had nothing to do with how hard he worked, but he's going to have to earn it on his own. But he does have privileges that other kids don't. Like, he gets to skip school to go watch football practice. That I wish my dad would have been able to do that with me. But we're watching, and I'm just watching Chuba Purdy not look good, Tate not look good. But I'm watching the kid from St. Thomas Aquinas effectively move the offense. Now, that doesn't mean I want to see him in a game if things go bad, but it does. I do think he is a tangible guy that we can put in situations to develop. What I wouldn't want to do is burn Duffy's freshman year, but you get 4 games, right? So what I would love to see is put this kid on scholarship. If we get in some situation like Duquesne, put Duffy in, let him get his reps, but let this guy get reps too. Let this guy start to develop, and now you may have a story that later on down the road might be a feel good. You got to play live. You got to get live rounds, man. You're not going to know how fast this game is until you actually get out there and you see them things going, man. My first game I ever played was against Miami in 2002. And it was nothing but like anybody watched the movie Any Given Sunday when Jamie Foxx was in there and you just saw blurs. That's all I saw. But you got to see them blurs because by the time we play Florida at the end of the season, the game has slowed down for me. And then my sophomore year, I started, boom, boom, boom. So put the kid out there, let him start making some plays, because what you may end up finding is that next year he could be a serviceable backup to Duffy, who we do need to be the starter. Not just for the sake of the program, but for the sake of recruiting. Duffy's got to be that guy next year. Or we can convince Jordan to come back in some way that way. But here's what I don't think. I know the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to work together as they're the two massive conferences right now. They're the ones that are doing things better. Their fan bases are what people don't know. Like, go to Ohio. Like, we know the South has big time football, and we do know of Texas with the talent in big time football. But Ohio is literally 3 cities and a bunch of nothingness. But in those nothingness small towns, it's like South Georgia. They love their sport. Nebraska, they love their sport. Even Maryland. Maryland is not that bad when it comes to the fan support. I talk with DJ a lot, and he talks about how Indiana is great and how the fan base loves them there. Purdue has had a football-only facility for damn near a decade, and we haven't even broke ground yet. And they're also good academic institutions. So I agree with you about the shift that needs to make. The problem is what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, what is the loyalty factor that we truly have in this? Like, we are the reason why Miami came to the ACC. Are we willing to? We're going to always play that game, and we need to. But are we willing to, because they don't want Miami, and Miami may have. Don't get me wrong. I'm not doing this to bash Miami. Fiscally speaking, with what Miami's being able to do with the hospital and other stuff, they can spin now with anybody for the not too distant in the recent history. They don't have the feel of a Big Ten team though. They don't have the facilities. They don't have the fan base. And I'm not saying that. It's just you're a school with 5,000 students. It's impossible to have the same feel as Happy Valley, as the Big House, as the Horseshoe. Clemson does. So that might be where everybody wants Clemson to be a rival. Well, we may have to finally become a true rival with Clemson and say, hey, if y'all come and accept us and y'all pay this $50 million bailout fee, which the ACC was the first to establish a stupid penalty to leave the conference. But that's what we have to do for the betterment of us, because what's going to happen is everybody, forget NIL. So forget the NIL. We can't compete. When Vanderbilt is going to get $75 million just in TV share revenues, basically SEC schools every football season will get $100 million between the shared TV revenues and the BCS and the bowl payouts, because they're going to have 1 to 2 teams in the playoffs. They're going to have 3 teams in a New Year's Day bowl, and they're going to have 7 teams in their conference playing significant bowls that are paying money. And these conferences, everybody pulls it, and then they split it down the middle evenly after expenses are taken. So the only conference that's comparable to that is the Big Ten. And what do we offer the Big Ten? They all want to recruit Florida. They want to recruit the South. So we give them entry to the South, and we give them everything that they want. A venue that can, an on-campus venue that, when packed, is one of the top stadiums in the nation. You give them, we would not be the best team, but we would not be the worst team. We can beat the Marylands. We can beat the Purdue's. We could beat the Michigans every now and then. We'd have a hard time with the Ohio States. And I won't even lie, with Matt Campbell's going to be down for a couple years. But I think like that's the only move that we can make, especially when the Big 12 has made a shift to go bring, I believe it was a Cincinnati, UCF, and who else did they bring in? But anyways, they're making some moves to make themselves a little bit tougher with the better G5 teams. But the SEC, we're never going to go into the SEC. And I'm going to be honest with you. Like, what people don't realize is that's a Florida thing. Florida won't allow us to be in there. They'll take the game, the rivalry game, but the rivalry game doesn't count against them in the SEC. It doesn't benefit Florida for us to be in the SEC. And for people who bring up, let me tell you about the old man. The old man just doesn't. The old man always said, "Don't make newspaper clippings." So he never really talked trash about anything. He was always complimentary about how tough the SEC was. But what people fail to realize is, before we joined the ACC, we played 4 SEC teams and beat them. We played LSU, South Carolina, Florida, and I believe Auburn. Like, if you look at Bobby's history against the SEC, who the hell thinks this man? Why would he fear the SEC when he beat the top teams consistently? You don't think he gonna Kentucky ain't never won the SEC. You think Bobby feared Kentucky? You think he fears Vanderbilt? You think he fears Missouri now? Nobody's scared of them. Texas, and now I'm not saying that the SEC is not tough, but Texas A&M arguably, they were. Texas A&M and Missouri never did anything in the Big 12. They come to the SEC, and now they're considered one of the top teams. That lets you know it can be done.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, but Missouri actually went to 2 consecutive SEC championship games out the gate. No disrespect, Alabama and Georgia are the 2 top teams in the nation right now in present history. Nobody can really compete with what they have going. I'm not afraid of anybody else in that conference consistently. Those 2 teams are machines. Now, Texas A&M, I think Jimbo is going to do what he did at Florida State. You keep recruiting at that level. You keep bringing in 5-star after 5-star. Something's got to shake, right? But I do think that Clemson, outside of this year, could have competed with anybody in the SEC consistently. And I think a good Florida State team, a resurgent Florida State team, a competent Florida State team, we're still in Florida. And we're right next to the good part of Georgia. Like, Atlanta got cats. Like, Atlanta and Miami, there's no beach in Atlanta. That's the difference. But even the skill set, I will say that there's a lot of similarities. I know Miami people don't like that. But we got them country boys in Valdosta, Cairo, Moultrie, all that stuff that we can go bring some linemen in. We just got to do a better job of winning, establishing relationships, and making connections. But I'll end with this. One of the things that Florida State fans have to realize, and where I think when we'll really achieve, is when we start treating, and this is a Big Ten mindset, SEC mindset as well, is when we start treating all the legends, and I say legends meaning like if you did mat drills, you're a legend. Like that was like I've been good the whole time. It's the hardest shit I've ever endured in my life outside of being in the hospital with COVID for 10 days. If you've done mats, you should be welcome with a red carpet to come back home. And when I talked to guys who were at Penn State, there was a kid during Jimbo's era from Tampa who went to Penn State. And I said, "Why did you go to Penn State? Why did you come to Florida State?" I knew his dad. And he said, when we went up to Penn State in athletics, everybody who worked in athletics was a former Penn State athlete. They take care of their athletes. You talk to Ohio State guys. Right now, Ohio State takes really, really good care of their former players. I talked to guys who went to like actually Penn. Not even forget that. I've got friends with Penn who played at Penn State, a little bit older than me, that still get stuff from Penn State. Florida sends packages to former players of gear, so every year they got swag. They recruit the kids too, so they're building these things. Alabama, there was a guy here locally in Jacksonville. I would say his name, Sam Matthews. A lot of people don't know who Sam Matthews is. Sam Matthews went back to Alabama, and a man asked him to sign his belly. Don't ask me to do that because I'm going to punch you in your stomach. But the point is that Sam wasn't on those national championship teams, but all Alabama fans remember and recognize and honor. So what does that mean? Is that vanity? Yes. I really don't need any of that stuff. But I'm going to tell you what recruits see. When you come back or they see people on Twitter and when they see that and they see you're doing that, like I always say, Chris, that's setting up your 4 years to leverage you for your next 40. It's showing that, oh, wait a minute. I might not be able to get $1 million NIL deal here, but if I come here and I make some plays, I'm going to always be able to come back and I'm going to be able to earn a living because these guys are going to honor it. And what better way to show the example than the university? But, I mean, I get treated pretty well, but that's because I come back often and I'm from Tallahassee. But I do know there are some guys who don't get treated as well. Now, the Charlie Woods, Derek Brooks, those guys, and rightfully so. But there are more really, really good FSU players who are doing big things than the same 4 people that get thrown down everybody's throat. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. Those are soft of the earth guys, best guys you could ever be around. But imagine if we, like there's fans who don't know who Andre Wadsworth is. And Andre Wadsworth was the highest drafted player in Florida State history before Jameis. And guess what he started as? He started as a walk-on. So you know who needs to know about that story? CJ. Right. You know who needs to, who, again, just connect. There's not a player on Foster stuff. I didn't know that about CJ, right? So I know we talked about in the group chat about some old school stories. We had Blindside before Blindside. There was a guy named, one of my teammates, Todd Williams, he's passed, but Todd Williams literally was homeless going into the senior year in high school. Played at Braden Southeast. Ended up being a draft pick to the Tennessee Titans. Guy, so you talk about guys who don't know what it's like and making right. He was how he fed himself in high school was beating up people and being protection for prostitutes and people until he decided that he wanted to focus on football. We've had guys who have some tremendous stories that our players don't know, but bigger than that, our fan base doesn't know. And our original 4. What that means is our 4 original black players, I got a chance to interview them during the quarantine. They need a movie. But nobody knows their story. What they went through during that time. And I know people want to be I don't want to feel bad for stuff that I ain't have. Man, bump all that. It is a great story. All 4 went to the NFL. All 4 tremendous men. One of them is one of the greatest DBs to ever play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got 4 Super Bowls. These guys, but these guys don't feel like they're honored. They feel like when they come, and they have a statue now, but when they come in and they walk, you won't even know who they are. But it is tough to know who they are now but we should have known who they were from the set when they played in the 70s, and it should be every year. We should know who these guys are. We should know who these guys are up until into that. But that's again, it's attitudes that we need to take before we even make those moves, because I will say SEC and ACC schools SEC and Big Ten schools have consistent behaviors from boosters and fans and players that we haven't had consistently enough yet. And if we do make that move, there could be a fear that we actually could, and we're not doing those things, we could actually expedite our demise too.
Yeah, and we've talked about it so many times offline about, how Florida State needs to invite everybody back, because the only difference is you'll come, invite or not. You always feel welcome, so you're going to come back regardless of if they give you an invite or not. Taylor, I'm gonna move on to I want to ask you about the mega camp. Tell me, like I've seen a lot of comments. People were saying that the mega camp didn't have really great players at it and stuff of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't as good as last year's because, like I said, some of the things last year, there were some factors that were going into it, kind of like with opening up on June 1st kind of situation. It was that excitement that you brought into the program with that sense of excitement. So really with the mega camp, it's not really all about Florida State. It's really about giving these kids an opportunity to be successful at other universities that were there at the event. So like I said, it's always about giving back to those kids that need an opportunity. I think FIU is doing their camp today, so that's going to be really exciting to see how that goes out. But it just gives kids more opportunities, and I think a lot of people don't really realize that. They all think it has to be about Florida State. Now, Florida State did offer some kids. I believe they offered a linebacker. They offered a DB and also a running back, I believe. So there was a couple of different prospects they offered. And, there were some offers being put out there, but it isn't necessarily a high-priority target for some of these guys at Florida State. I think it was just more of an opportunity to get kids' names out there, get a couple of universities out there. If it's a Yale or if it's a Division II school, I mean, they have to have love too. I mean, they all want to be successful in some type of way, and I think this is Florida State's way in being able to showcase their campus, showcase how the lifestyle is going on, coaching staff, being able to be coached by different coaches. I just think it's very important for those kids to be able to get an opportunity, and I think that was kind of successful from this past weekend.
Yeah,
people got to realize too. We had an elite camp that was truly elite on Saturday. So you don't do an elite camp and then come to the mega camp. A mega camp is to find diamonds in the roughs.
Exactly.
Which, shout out to my high school, Florida High. We had a young man get offered, class of 2024 kid. But there's also like literally mega camps every other day. So like, there's, like you said, FIU's got one with Michigan, and Florida State's at that one. So like if you're a Miami kid, why would you come to Tallahassee to the mega camp when FSU gonna be at the mega camp in your neck of the woods? So like it's just common sense stuff, and this recruiting stuff is expensive, man. Like not all these kids are getting bags to come up here. Like I saw a guy tweet something like, if a school offers you should, it's disrespectful not to come to their camp. Gas is $5. Like, and you got, and most people don't gotta work. Like these parents aren't making money to coach a game. Like you make it more affordable for these kids to come. And I'm not asking anybody to bend over.
Have cars. I mean, they're just riding with whoever they can get a ride from. I mean, it's hard to find a ride. I mean, especially if you don't have that.
Or high school coaches are doing this, and they've been doing this for a while. But I'm not finna load. I'll tell a kid to Tallahassee, like if I would have came over to Tallahassee, hey man, you want to ride? You can hop in the car with me, but you're gonna be in Tallahassee like I'm in Tallahassee, so you're gonna be here for a couple of days. But they moms don't want to do that, and I don't want that liability either. But it's just difficult. But I think what we have to stay tuned for though is the camp. FSU also has 4 other one-day camps. Or is it 3 other? And then they got a 7-on-7 camp. Then they got the big man camp. Like there's plenty of opportunities for them to be able to get guys. And I will say, and I say it tongue in cheek, one of the guys that they have, Chuck Cantor. Chuck is pretty, Chuck is Chuck. Chuck was the athletic equipment manager when I was at Florida State. But Chuck is on the horn, calling guys, trying to get them to come in, and they're doing stuff, man. Like I said, when I talk to Luke Cromenhawk about the our 2024 quarterback commit, about what the elite camp was like, he said, man, there was some cats there, man. There was some really, really solid guys, a lot of competing going on. Are we going to have a top 10 class this year? Probably not. We win, look for the 24, look for the 25 class to be pretty potent. But it's time for them to develop what we have on roster.
One that you got to watch out for. Look, before I forget this, y'all, because I'm ADD, like seriously bad. I want to give a shout out to Coach Lonnie, the head coach for the softball team. She just signed an extension. And James, I told you, maybe it wasn't you that was asking in the group, but somebody kept asking, like, do y'all think she's going to jump to Texas A&M? And I kept saying, no, she's not going nowhere. I already know what. And they did offer her more money than what we gave her. So like everybody needs to quit. Like they're like, oh, I guess Florida State did finally drop the back. No, she got offered more money to go to Texas A&M, but she's going to stay loyal to the fact of not just what she's going to get in her pocket. It's the fact of the upgrades to the facilities. She's actually going to get a facility built for herself. Taylor, I do want you to touch on. There was quite a few people that were upset about Brown committing to the Sooners. So
Yeah.
kind of touch base on it because I've got questions on here.
Well, I don't want to get too in depth with it because it's kind of a sketchy situation there. But Brown was actually from Rikers High School in Tallahassee.
Hold on, T. Rickards.
Yeah.
We gotta pronounce. Just gotta pronounce it right. That's the South Side, baby.
Yeah.
That's just want to make sure.
I knew he was gonna say it. I knew it was coming. I said,
yeah. So I was just gonna let you know as well. He did get offered by Oklahoma, I believe June 2nd. Very fast with the commitment. I mean, it was very, and I was very surprised that he jumped on that offer because there was two teams there with Florida State, Auburn, also Louisville was a situation there as well. There was a couple of teams involved. He had visited Florida State about 5-6 times. I mean, ironically so. I mean, he's from Tallahassee, but just Florida State didn't really want to pull the trigger. And I think it's mainly because of just Hakeem Williams, Jalen Brown. There were some different situations going on that were basically wide receiver recruits that they were very, very high on, and just getting a situation there. So, they're wanting to get 4 wide receivers in this class, and Brown wasn't really a top of their priority list. Not to say he was a bad wide receiver. I just think there were more better targets that they had available at their disposal right now. And I think that there was a situation where Florida State wanted to kind of wait around, put him on the back burner for a little bit, see where everything kind of lies, maybe getting him in for an official visit during the season kind of thing. And I don't think they really anticipated him to commit this early. And I think that was kind of a situation where Florida State was like, okay, well, if you commit to Oklahoma, we're going to go to some other options and really push for the Jalen Browns, the Hakeem Williams, all these other kids around there. And I don't necessarily think it was a loss by Florida State because everyone talks about keeping the kids in their own backyard. Now, if you lost to Makari Vickers, for example, to a Alabama or Georgia, anything like that, that's a loss. But with Brown, I don't think he was quite a priority. Maybe some argue he should have been and should have been a situation there, but I just don't think it should have been a situation where Florida State should have jumped all on board for just Keon Brown for right now.
No, it was too soon. That's what I kept telling people. I was like, it's too soon.
Yeah.
Like the way, as quick as he's jumping on this, it's almost like, and look, I've told people this. I've been stating it on all of social media. Like, I think kids are jumping on offers and committing really, really fast to get their spot, mainly because of the transfer portal, mainly because of COVID year, that extra year. But there's a lot of kids that are jumping right on top of an offer because they need that spot. They want to make sure that they're in somewhere. So Florida State not being hot after him, because we do have priority wide receivers we were going after. Technically, we're over him. I don't agree with losing a kid out of the backyard, but I also don't agree with the kid jumping on Oklahoma as fast as he did. His decision. I wish him the best of luck, and y'all know as well as I do. 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, 2 days before signing day, he could decommit, commit somewhere else. I mean, that's just like the biggest part of it. So
things change, and one thing too I always tell people is, and I had a teammate of mine, Lewis Smith, and I brought it up, and I never thought about that. He was from Quincy Shanks. Now like that'd be like Gaston High. It's very difficult to be from Tallahassee and to play at Florida State. It's not like Miami. Miami's a huge city, right? And it's a lot that goes on, but like Tallahassee is very small, so there's nowhere where you can really go hide. So if you're not any good, or the school's not any good, you guys aren't playing, you get to hear it all the time. So like, and there's still, Tallahassee is a city that a lot of people, you only experience the game day atmosphere or the college atmosphere. It's a completely different city outside of that stadium. Like where I grew up, is a lot different than what a lot of people experience with Tallahassee. And some people just need to get away from that. You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. Go see something new, experience something new, see a new part of the world. Like you don't really, especially on the South Side. I'm speaking from personal experience. I don't know the kid, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes it's not the end of the world. It's not that anybody didn't recruit him hard or didn't do a good job. A kid that I can say from things that I heard about, and it's not that he's a bad kid, but Tyrion Arnold needed to get away from Tallahassee. Like, it was in his best interest to get to a change of scenery so that he can do what he needed to do so that he could be successful. Because no matter what you believe about name, image, and likeness, the goal has never, nor will it ever be, to get. It would never be about education. The goal is about going to college to change your position in life and possibly, and not, at least not be a burden on your family. If nothing else, to be able to take care of your family. You're going to play in the NFL, but if you don't get the NFL, you're going to who has the best system in order for you to be successful in the next years and the next phases of your life. And no matter how good Florida State is, if you feel like there's an element that's going to keep bringing you back and holding you down, you got to get out of that. It's different when you're coming from out of town. You don't have to go find stuff. When you're from there, things can find you. So, you know, that's my thought process on him. But he's a tremendous athlete. But there are some guys that we're in it for that are a lot better. And I think not that are comparable, or we have better relationships and rapport with.
They'll fit the system that we're trying to put together better. That's what I was catching.
I want to give hope. I want to give some hope, though. Watch Raylan Wilson, though. Watch the Raylan Wilson recruitment. You heard that here before I even dropped it anywhere else. I'll say it's, to quote my boy C.J. Wilson in the quote that it's always get your girl back season. Like you always have a chance to get back in with your ex if you got game. So, just check that out. We may have some traction there, and with some other recruits again. We win, and things may change.
Taylor, that's exactly what I'm about to bring up. And I'm bringing it to Taylor because we've given, so before we combine it with fifth quarter, we've been given like what we think the schedule is going to be like, or maybe what our record might end up being if so-and-so stays healthy. But Taylor, let's just say we get 7 wins, which sounds terrible to me, but let's just say that's what we get. Do you think it boosts us enough for recruitment for the future? Because this is what we get off base because we get passionate about what we talk about, and I'm the world's worst about it. So I'm not knocking nobody because I just did it a minute ago, pretty bad. But the future, because I got to get that part in there because we've done pretty good about the past and the present. But the future of this program, if we win 7 games, how well do you think it'll be?
I mean, I honestly, right now, if you're looking at the construction of this team, I think they're a 6 or a 7 win team. So, I mean, realistically, you're looking at if Travis stays healthy, if he's playing 10 games this season, say, for example, if you have a serious shot to be a 7 or an 8 win team. But the uncertainty of his durability, you really just don't know what you got. And James, you even talked about the receivers. With Johnny Wilson being as tall as he is, the reason he transferred to Florida State was some of his hamstring injuries, some of his problems that he was having inconsistencies catching-wise. He drops a lot of passes. I mean, there is some potential in his game because he is 6'7", 230 pounds, but you also have to go with the bad side of it as well. Micah Pittman, there's a situation there where he wasn't very productive at Oregon. But he does bring a lot in the return game. He does bring a lot in the slot, in the backfield. He can be utilized all over the place. Winston Wright, same thing. I mean, there's a situation where if Winston Wright is healthy and his camp does think that he's going to be ready by week 0, he has expressed that to me several times, saying that is a situation where he thinks he could be ready. And if he is ready, I think that really elevates the floor of Florida State's receiving corps because I definitely think that Florida State, unlike last season they were probably bottom of the ACC, and this season I think they're a mid-tier ACC wide receiver corps. And you even look at a guy like Ja'Kai Douglas, if he could stay healthy, if he could be able to utilize Malik McClain. I mean, the list goes on and on. Really, I think you're set in stone what you have on defense. I think the biggest question marks were Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas, but you brought in a guy with Jared Verse who has 9.5 sacks. You bring in, you have McClendon being able to start up in that starter role. You have Dennis Briggs who's going to be coming off of injury, coming back. You have a Byron Turner who was off of injury as well. I mean, there's going to be guys that step up, and they had 31 sacks last season. I think they can collectively come together to have close to that mark or even over it. But I just don't think you need to expect and say, well, Jared Verse had 9.5 sacks with Albany. He's going to have 9.5 sacks with Florida State and just replace Jermaine Johnson's productivity. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a combination of a lot of different things. You may even see a Patrick Payton step in, and you also don't want to forget that Fabian Lovett and Robert Cooper were two guys that come back this season. They're going to be absolutely pivotal for this defense. So when you really think about the overall win total of this team, I think it all comes down to can most of the guys stay healthy? Because the linebacker core is not very deep. So if you want to think that Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach, if both of those guys can really be successful, I think that could be a really pivotal piece as well. You're looking at the first half of the schedule. Like I said, if you go 2-1 in those first 3 games, I think that really sets the tone for kind of the end of the season when you're playing the Georgia Techs and Syracuse and Louisiana Lafayette at the end of the year. Really, I think you're, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Louisiana Lafayette, and Duquesne are your 4 guaranteed wins. So now you have to find 3 more out of those last 8 games. Is it doable? Yeah. Do you have some tough stretches that you have to go through, like an at NC State, playing Clemson at home, probably in a primetime game, playing in a neutral site with LSU? I mean, you're playing a Friday night game against Florida. You're playing that Friday night game against Louisville. I mean, Wake Forest, Boston College, there's a lot of good teams on this schedule, and you're playing some top-tier ACC quarterbacks. And I didn't even mention Miami. Well, they're renting out stadium. I don't even know if you can because, you got to find a place to play down there. So, really, when you look at it, though, I think that Florida State's really got to capture basically 7 wins. And my expectation is 6 or 7. I think 7 will be a safe bet. And I don't think, like James said, I think you cannot get blown out by 40. You can't have that on national TV just to have that because recruits are going to be looking at that. They're wanting to see a fast start, and they're wanting to see you finish strong as well. A lot of people talk about, well, if you go to a bowl game and you win your bowl game, but you have to realize bowl games are starting in January, late December. Those recruits are already going to be signed by then. So you really have to figure out, early in the season, you have to take advantage. You have to get, official visits in Miami, Clemson, those different places to be able to be successful and share that enthusiasm of what you're going to have this season.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna add to it a little bit is this is where me and you're a little bit different. I don't need all of them to stay healthy because it's not possible.
Yeah, it's not possible.
But all I need is for whomever it is that goes down, it's the guy that's behind him to step up, just half-ass step up. I don't need him to go in there and fill his shoes completely, but just half-ass fill the position, and you get 7 or 8 wins because I don't think, like James brought up earlier, that Miami has the depth. After that front 7, they don't have the depth if we can push far enough. And I also don't think that Boston College is going to be much better than they were last year. I just don't see it. Maybe a little, but I don't see much better. There's just what additive do they have that's much better? So therefore, I think that's your other 2 or 3 wins to pick you up to put you at that 7 or 8. I'm not going to say 9, but that's what I would hope to see. If I can see 9 wins again, I'd feel a lot better about the direction that we're moving in. 7 and 8 doesn't really do a whole lot for me personally. I mean, I'm glad that we're not, it's a losing season, but 7 and 8 wins isn't something for Florida State fans to start chanting and rooting and all that about. That's still not acceptable to our standard. Now, again, everybody knows from watching me before, I'm going to support Norvell 100%. I think he's a great guy. I think he's more of a CEO type coach. I don't think he's the greatest X's and O's guy. but I think he's got a hell of a morale around him. Just like I've said before, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the man says good morning. He doesn't care. He's 90 to nothing. He's a great guy. And the biggest thing that's missing is maybe an assistant here or there. You know, I think Atkins might be the best, and y'all can knock me if you want to. I think Atkins might be the best X's and O's guy other than Norvell that you've got. I'm not knocking Fuller. I'm just stating that the guy's been around football a long time and he's played it. So that's why I think I could put him up a little bit higher. But if y'all want to touch on anything, go ahead. We're running at about an hour and 15 minutes.
I'll touch on something real quick that I actually missed talking about wide receiver recruiting. I should have probably mentioned it when I was talking about Keon Brown. But the Jerron Wallace kid, or Jerian Wallace, he's actually from Texas, wide receiver. He actually did a commitments kind of edit on Twitter saying that he was committed to the program. That is not true. And I don't know if y'all remember some of the certain situations with Swayze from St. Thomas Aquinas, and also Melvin Jordan, the kid that transferred to Oregon State. There are some situations where some recruits aren't really communicating all their intentions to the staff before they actually make their intentions known. And this was another situation. And I don't think Florida State was ready to take a commitment right now because of, like I was saying before, some of their wide receiver targets they have in place right now. Not to say he's a bad kid, because he's got 877 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, kid is a playmaker, but I do think they want to wait because they just offered him this month. He actually visited last weekend before that, and I think they really wanted to get more time out there to kind of evaluate him and see how he is. He is a 3-star on 3, but I think the other platforms, I don't even think he's ranked on any of those. So just overall, I don't think Norvell was quite ready to take that. He didn't really communicate to Dugans as well, from what I've heard, and just a situation where I think it was odd with everything that was going on. And like I said, I hope the kid does really well this season. He's a really talented playmaker, but I just don't think Florida State was ready to take that commitment just yet.
James, you got anything that you want to close with about possible?
Yeah, I meant to say, Florida State is hiring a former alum to help with recruiting. Gerard Ross played DB from 2001 to 2005 season, so I think that was kind of cool. Hopefully that'll help with some of these relationships that we haven't been having. Hopefully it's not too little, too late, but. I think what Taylor brought up is that it was something important in recruiting. There's committable and non-committable offers. Just because you have an offer doesn't mean you have an offer. So like it's sometimes it's like a placeholder, and I'm not saying I don't know the situation, but I do know other schools do this too. There's also relationship offers. So like I may have offered you because I know your coach, and I'm helping your coach get you other offers. So, like, people will look at it, and the film might not even make sense, but they see you have a Florida State offer because they have that relationship, and another school may offer, and you're like, and I'm not saying that the kid is a good, but like, look at like Tyler Jefferson, who was a guy that was a quarterback target that we were really, really high on for a while, and we offered him, but he just committed to Central Michigan. There's no knock on him. I'm just saying there's a big discrepancy there.
Yep. Well, guys, I think the show flowed so good that we're at an hour and 20 minutes. We'll be back every Monday. Sometimes the time might change, but we're going to try to stick to the 7 o'clock as much as possible. James and I also have a new podcast that comes on tomorrow at 6:30. We do have a guest coming on in Michaela Edenfield. She will be there at 6:30 with us. You will be able to catch us at the same spot that you're catching us on now. It's just that it's a different podcast. It's a different face. And we're going to cover mostly NIL, probably all NIL. We also started what we start last week? So I started a campaign for Derek McClendon. He's got a T-shirt campaign that's out right now. There's a limited of 50 of them. He will also sign, whether that be a football, the jersey, the shirt that you buy. He will also sign those as well, and you will get an autographed piece from him as well. If it was me, I would pick to get something separate from the shirt signed, just so you get 2 pieces from him. But go check it out on any of my platforms or on Derek's platform and buy a shirt. Support the young man in his NIL. It's this is what it's supposed to be about. But y'all will love the show tomorrow with Michaela. If y'all got anything, go ahead and say it now, because I'm going to end with Go Noles, and y'all have a good night.
Yeah, it was a great podcast, and like I said, looking forward to doing more of these in the future. But go Noles.
Yep, and we'll all get to the point where it's just, and James will probably shake his head to this, but like the first time I had him on with Mike from Micanopy, we were at like an hour and 44 minutes, and both of them, when we were done, could not believe it. They were like, "We did it for how long?" And I was like, "Yeah," because everybody had a time limit, but the flow goes and we continue to talk. It just happens. But I'll split these up as much as possible, and we might have 2 episodes out of it. You never know. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see y'all tomorrow and then next Monday. Y'all keep checking out Taylor's articles from 5th quarter. I don't know what he does other than type, but he says he has a full-time job. I personally don't believe him. Y'all have a good one, and go Noles.
Go Noles.